Good morning, I'm Joe Fryer.
And I'm Savannah Sellers. Right now on Morning News Now, the waiting game. Another contentious day of jury deliberations in the Ahmaud Arbery murder trial begins shortly as day one comes to a close without a verdict. Our team is outside the courtroom with the latest developments as the nation awaits a final decision. Turkey trot on this Thanksgiving Eve. You better believe we've got your full travel outlook on deck, from the highways to the skyways and everything in between, as millions of Americans are expected to head out for the holiday weekend, smashing pandemic records. And, of course, our weather expert, Bill Cairns, is on standby for that highly anticipated forecast. We've got it all coming up. And this morning, giving back. Unfortunately, the supply chain crunch is weighing heavily on many Americans this holiday season. And when you add inflation to the mix, the load to bear for some becomes even greater. That's especially true for our nation's food banks, as the families they serve. We'll take you to Boston, where demand for goods is sky high, made worse by the pandemic, the challenges staff are facing, and how you can help. Plus, talking turkey, feeling anxious about heading home this weekend, dreading those prying questions from family members about life and love. We've got an expert on hand with some tips on how to get through the holidays with your mental health intact. And it's Thanksgiving Eve. Look at that.
Yes, exactly.
Lots of turkey talk
today. We have
today.
lots of turkey and family and all the fun stuff.
Yeah, absolutely.
And we have to do weather, too, to get things kicked off, because that's what everyone's worried about.
Yeah, it really is, especially with so many people heading to the roads, the skies. We'll have it all covered for you today.
Yeah.
We're going to begin this morning with the latest on that travel outlook, of course, as millions of Americans are set to hit the road for the holiday.
Yeah, it is cold outside for East Coasters. Even Florida is chilly. So NBC News meteorologist Bill Cairns joins us right off the bat this morning with a look at the forecast. Hey, Bill, good morning.
Hey, good morning. And, yesterday was just ridiculous. I don't know how it was around a lot of other areas of the country, but the roads were just crazy around New York City and where I live in New Jersey. So I think a lot of people were trying to jump on this travel early. So, the weather's fine, but, it doesn't mean, our systems can only handle so much volume. Today, cold, obviously. It's cold all the way down into Georgia this morning. When you see that, like, Florida and the Panhandle is in the mid-30s, that's chilly. Panama City's at 37 degrees. So even by Florida midwinter standards, this is a cold air mass. But it'll be sunny this afternoon. And with the winds lighter than yesterday, I think we'll have even less airport delays today than yesterday. We will see some late-day rain developing in areas like Little Rock, towards Tulsa possibly. But again, that's not going to cause many airport issues or issues on the roads, and a tiny bit of snow in the Rockies. So heading to the airports early today. Airports I have colored in green. I do not expect any weather impacts at all. Areas in yellow, maybe very minor issues. Windy conditions, Minneapolis, Chicago, Detroit, possibly some areas of light snow, Salt Lake City and Denver. But again, this is about as good as it possibly gets for a weather forecast. Then on Thanksgiving Day, and I know some people travel in the morning, too. Heavy rain will be breaking out in coastal Texas, along with some thunderstorms. So from Corpus Christi to Brownsville, back up to Victoria, into Houston, Beaumont, Port Arthur. Those areas could have some issues. And then as far as rainfall forecasts go, possibly about 1 to 2 inches there from Houston to Victoria. It's not going to be enough for any flooding, but you wouldn't want to be driving in that. And the parade forecast, guys, still looks great on Thanksgiving. So I've done my part. Everyone looks like they should be able to get to their destinations. Getting home will be a different story. We'll cover that later in the show. But I may be talking snow for a bunch of cities in the Northeast for the first time this weekend. Stay tuned for that.
All right. We'll get to Thanksgiving first, though. All right. Thanks, Bill.
You said heading home. Thanks, Bill.
Yes.
All right, now let's talk about that travel outlook as millions of Americans get ready to hit the road and the sky for the holiday.
Yeah, more Americans are expected to fly this Thanksgiving than at any other point since the pandemic began, and on the roads, which is how most Americans are getting around this holiday. AAA forecasts the number of drivers will get close to pre-pandemic levels. That means you could hit some traffic on your way to that turkey dinner. WNBC reporter Tracy Strahan joins us now for more on the traffic outlook. She is at a service area on the New Jersey Turnpike. So, Tracy, good morning. How are the roads looking this morning where you are right now?
Well, let's just say we are not alone along the New Jersey Turnpike this morning. We've seen a steady volume of travelers hitting the road since before sunrise here. And when they do hit this gas station, they're going to be paying an average of $3.50 a gallon. Now, that's actually higher than the national average, $3.40. Gas prices certainly the focus of this Thanksgiving holiday travel season. It was just yesterday that President Biden agreed to release the petroleum barrels, 50 million of them them in reserve. And that's something that's actually pretty rare. It's something that's done to lower gas prices in times of war, maybe during natural disasters. This time around, it's only to lower gas prices. It's not something that these travelers may end up seeing, however, because they say it won't hit and possibly until mid-December, possibly the end of December, closer to Christmas.
Yeah, so Tracy, I mean, gas prices are on everyone's mind. What are the prices at the pump like right now where you are, and how much do we expect that to impact whether people hit the roads this holiday?
Well, brace yourselves, depending on where you are. Here where we are along the New Jersey Turnpike, $3.55. Keep in mind that rest stops traditionally higher than most gas stations. And again, that national average, $3.40. It doesn't seem to have an impact, however, on travelers so far. AAA predicts out of the 53 million people traveling this year, 90% of them are opting to hit the roads, possibly indicative that we're still in the midst of the pandemic.
And while most folks are driving, some are going to be flying this holiday. So what should those folks expect to deal with at airports around the country this holiday weekend?
There could be some pre-turkey headaches at the airports. And we were just at Newark Liberty Airport yesterday. TSA is where people are really preparing to have some problems. Now, keep in mind, TSA had to comply with that federal mandate starting this Monday that all workers had to be vaccinated. They do have 93% compliance, but still people were bracing themselves for really long lines and bottlenecks at security checkpoints. TSA says they are prepared. They prepared to screen about 2 million people in airports every single day through Sunday.
All right, Tracy, thank you so much, and happy Thanksgiving to you.
Now, as millions of people hit the road to celebrate Thanksgiving, experts are urging travelers to take all possible precautions as COVID cases quickly rise across the country. While cases this year are well below what we saw in 2020, more than 30 states are seeing an uptick in infections. This rise comes as officials say they expect Thanksgiving air travel to approach pre-pandemic levels, as we just heard. Doctors are now calling for all eligible adults to get the COVID booster shot as soon as possible to maximize protection against the virus and to avoid another COVID surge as we approach winter and post this holiday season. NBC News medical contributor Dr. Uche Blackstock joins us now for more. Dr. Blackstock is an emergency medicine physician and the CEO of Advancing Health Equity, and of course, someone you recognize on the show. Dr. Blackstock, good morning. So cases, as we just mentioned, across the country are on the rise in about 30 states as more people start to head out the door, cross those state lines, be indoors with their family. Now, we have even heard from people like Dr. Fauci kind of giving the green light for Thanksgiving celebrations, saying that's what they're going to be doing. But of course, some limitations. So just walk us through some things we should keep in mind, how we should decide who to invite to our parties, what type of precautions we should be taking.
Well, thank you so much for having me on, Savannah. And I think it's possible this year to have a safer Thanksgiving than last year because we have more tools in our toolbox. You know, obviously people can be vaccinated. So you want to make sure that whoever you're socializing with is fully vaccinated. People who are fully vaccinated and eligible should have received boosters. The other tool we have are rapid tests, and rapid tests are pretty amazing for determining who is not only infected but infectious, who has the ability to pass on the virus to someone else. And that is a test that you can take right before you see loved ones to ensure that you don't infect them. And so again, it's really using a bunch of these tools together. You can also open up windows and doors, bring in air purifiers, make sure that you have improved ventilation in indoor settings to make Thanksgiving as safe as possible.
And Dr. Blackstock, you mentioned that it should be with people who are vaccinated, and we've been talking about these difficult conversations that sometimes come up at family gatherings. I think this year is one of those new ones that we're dealing with. Are you vaccinated? Are you not? I mean, is your advice that people who are not vaccinated within a family should not be there for Thanksgiving dinner? Is it you should be masked? If so, how do you handle something like that safely?
Right. And I think everyone is going to take like their own personal risk. You know, I think for me, I would not feel comfortable spending Thanksgiving with someone who was not vaccinated. If people really do want to spend time with their unvaccinated relatives, they can have them take a rapid test before they see them. They're about 98% accurate. So again, we do have the tools for a safer Thanksgiving, but if you're going to be spending time indoors, you want to spend it with people who are fully vaccinated.
I think that testing reminder is a really good one, too. Still a tool that we have, still something that we can absolutely be using to help,
Right.
especially with getting together. Doctor, I want to ask you specifically about kids. COVID cases are rising among children. According to the CDC, child COVID cases have gone up 32% in the last 2 weeks.
Right.
Of course, we do know now that we do have this vaccine that children are eligible for of a certain age. What do you make of that rise, and what do parents need to know?
Right. I mean, I think that rise is incredibly concerning, but it just shows that the Delta variant, the virus, will go to and infect people who are not vaccinated. And we still have a substantial number of children, especially 5 to 11-year-olds, who are not vaccinated. So I would encourage parents to continue to talk to their pediatricians, family medicine physicians, and healthcare professionals about any questions they have about getting their children vaccinated. We know these vaccines are safe and effective, and we can help decrease those numbers by getting more children in this age group vaccinated.
Dr. Uche Blackstock, thank you so much. Info we need as we head into this holiday. Happy Thanksgiving.
Thank you. Happy Thanksgiving.
As we mentioned moments ago, just as millions of Americans prepare to hit the road for Thanksgiving, the Department of Energy is taking a rare step to address rising gas prices. President Biden announced yesterday the federal government is releasing oil from the nation's strategic petroleum reserve.
The impact is real, but the fact is we faced even worse spikes before. Just in the last decade. It will take time, but before long, you should see the price of gas drop where you fill up your tank.
NBC News correspondent Josh Letterman joins us now from Nantucket, Massachusetts, where the president and first lady are spending Thanksgiving. So, Josh, this is a big move to try to solve a big problem. The average cost per gallon is up over $1 from last year. So just how long will it take for Americans to see these prices start to drop? And what else did the president say in those remarks about this yesterday?
Yeah, big move and a pretty unusual move at that, Joe. It's not going to be immediate. It takes a while for oil supplies to work their ways through the system. And so most economists say we won't likely see any impact from this if it does actually have the desired effect of bringing down prices at the pump for another couple weeks into sometime in December, hopefully in time for folks to be heading out onto their Christmas holidays. We've actually already started to see oil prices start to decline a bit, but that has not yet translated into lower prices for the actual gasoline people are buying at the gas pump. And that's one of the reasons that President Biden has also asked the Federal Trade Commission to look into whether there could be some price gouging going on here, whether the oil companies are actually declining to pass some of those savings in terms of lower oil prices on to consumers in the form of lower gas prices. President Biden, as he was addressing those efforts to rein in costs yesterday, also spoke about his administration's broader efforts to tackle inflation, talking about how his Build Back Better agenda he believes will actually help reduce prices over the long term.
Josh, I also have to ask you about the president's workplace vaccine mandate. It's still facing some legal challenges. The Justice Department requested an emergency ruling to try to get the rule through. So briefly remind us who this mandate would impact and where do things stand with it this morning?
So this is a mandate that would hit all employers that have 100 or more employees. It's about 80 million workers estimated to be affected. They'd be required to either be vaccinated or undergo weekly testing. Now, the Biden administration is saying this is still an urgent matter and that even delaying implementation of this mandate would lead to thousands of hospitalizations or deaths. They are asking the court to say, look, if you're not going to let us go full bore with the vaccine mandate at this time, at least allow the portion of this rule that requires masking and weekly testing for those who are unvaccinated. Now, at any point in time, the Sixth Circuit could respond to this, but ultimately, this is likely to go to the Supreme Court.
And Josh, you're in Nantucket, where the president and first lady will be spending Thanksgiving. So what are their holiday plans?
Well, they have nothing official on their schedule, so hopefully it'll be a quiet time for them. But, this is actually a long-time tradition for the Biden family. Jill and Joe Biden, dating back to when they were first dating, had their first holiday as a couple here in Nantucket in 1975. We saw them get off the plane last night with a whole slew of grandchildren. We knew that from President Biden's book that one of his favorite activities to do here on Nantucket is to go shopping. He says that every single member of the family gets to pick out one gift that President Biden will cover during his Nantucket holiday, Joe.
All right. Sounds good, Josh. Thank you so much.
Jury deliberations are resuming this morning in the trial of 3 men accused of murdering Ahmaud Arbery.
Still no verdict in the case. Jurors deliberated for 6 hours yesterday after the prosecution delivered closing remarks and urged them to convict.
They know exactly what they did, and they know why they did it. It's not a mystery to them. When you come back with your guilty verdict, all you're doing is telling them, we know what you did too. And we're going to hold you responsible for it. Because guess what you did? You turned this young man into that young man. That's what you did. For absolutely no good reason at all.
NBC News correspondent Cal Perry is outside the courthouse in Brunswick, Georgia for us, and NBC News legal analyst Danny Ceballos is right here on set with us. Good morning to both of you. Cal, I'll start with you there on the ground. So we just heard part of the prosecution's final argument to the jury in that little soundbite there. Walk us through some of the main points in her rebuttal and the message she wanted to get across ahead of deliberations.
Hey, good morning, Savannah. I've got it sort of in 3 main points. The first was defining that citizen's arrest law for the jury, at least sort of what the prosecution and the state defines as that citizen's arrest law. In the state's mind, the citizen's arrest law is a felony that you witness in your presence. She wanted the jury to take that home with them, at least into deliberations. That, for the state, is going to be key. The second thing was about self-defense. Basically, her point is you cannot claim self-defense while initiating an attack. Take a listen to a little bit more when she speaks about self-defense.
In this case, they committed 4 different felonies, including the aggravated assault with a shotgun. They started it. They do not get to claim self-defense. And then, of course, provocation. You can't force someone to defend themselves against you, so you get to claim self-defense. This isn't the Wild West. No. So there's 3 instances where the defendants don't get to claim self-defense, and they committed all of them.
Finally, I think she wanted to make it clear, and she did make it clear, that the state believes these men should all be treated equally, connected equally in this crime. That was in direct response to the defense kind of separating out William Roddy Bryan, who, as his defense attorney said, was in that last pickup truck, only had a cell phone. I think really trying to sort of make a delineation between him and the McMichaels. Savannah?
So, Cal, Thanksgiving is tomorrow, of course. So what is the schedule like for these deliberations, and what's the mood like for Arbery's family as everyone waits for the verdict?
You know, we heard from Arbery's mother yesterday, and she was actually optimistic about the verdict. Take a listen.
I think Linda did a fantastic job. I think that she presented the evidence, again, very well. I do think that we will come back with a guilty verdict. And I want to leave you with this. God has brought us this far, and He's not going to fail us now. Amen. We will get justice for Ahmaud.
As for the schedule, Joe, the jury will deliberate today. If there is no verdict by the end of today, they'll take tomorrow, Thanksgiving Day, off, and be back Friday morning. For what it is worth, and I leave it to Danny Ceballos to kind of read into juries. Yesterday, the jury actually stayed an hour longer than they needed to, saying that they were close to a verdict. We'll see, obviously, today if that's still true.
All right, thanks, Callum. Perfect segue. Danny, let's bring you in here now, and let's talk about exactly what it is first that the jury is deliberating here. Each of these men faces 9 charges. Walk us through them and kind of tell us, are some here more straightforward? What is this?
Yes, malice murder is pretty straightforward. It's essentially intentional murder or intent to cause serious bodily harm. The more complicated is felony murder. And felony murder is a death that results in the commission of usually an inherently dangerous felony. The predicate felonies here are felonies like aggravated assault, and aggravated assault is something where you have your vehicle and you almost hit somebody. Another felony is false imprisonment. Hey, I'm cutting off your avenue of escape. I am keeping you in one place. False imprisonment. If a death results from those felonies, then you can have felony murder. It's a very complicated legal concept, but it's rooted in the public policy that we say in America, look, if you're going to go out and commit dangerous felonies, burglary, arson, rape, robbery, kidnapping, then if a death results, it's as if you might as well have expected a death to result. So we'll say the intent is there for all intents and purposes.
So quickly, can you say at this point, whose shoes would you rather be in right now?
I would always, I'm a criminal defense attorney, I would always rather be in the state's shoes. They have the power of the full government behind them. A defendant is always the underdog. I don't care what the burden of proof is for the prosecution. Prosecution has the stronger case here so far. It's an uphill battle for the defendants. But one last thing, William Roddy Bryant, do not be shocked if he is acquitted, because he has a very different set of liability than the others.
Dale, Danny, Cal, thank you both so very much. We appreciate it.
Yes, of course. Thank you so much. And the man police say drove his SUV into a holiday parade in Wisconsin appeared in court for the first time since the tragedy. Daryl Brooks was formally charged yesterday with 5 counts of intentional homicide. The same day prosecutors announced a 6th death. Take a listen.
Today we learned of another death of a child related to this case. We do expect a 6th count for first-degree intentional homicide to be issued or added, to this case.
NBC News correspondent Megan Fitzgerald joins us now from Waukesha. Megan, good morning. So what can you tell us about this 6th victim? I'm sure viewers are seeing here on their screen an 8-year-old boy. What do we know here? Just heartbreaking.
Yeah. Absolutely heartbreaking, Savannah. Good morning. Yeah, 8-year-old Jackson Spark, rather. He passed away yesterday, just as this suspect was making his first court appearance. We know that he underwent brain surgery on Sunday, and we also know that his 12-year-old brother was also among the children that were hospitalized. We know that there is a GoFundMe page that a family member made. We know that there's a church here in this community that is also asking for prayers. Possibly the church that his family belongs to. But certainly this is a community that is grieving, and just another devastating blow, knowing that an 8-year-old boy has tragically lost his life. Savannah?
It is. It's just so tragic, Megan. Let's now talk about the suspect. He has an extensive criminal history. It has, of course, come into focus in the wake of this tragedy. Tell us first what happened during his first court appearance yesterday.
Right. So Daryl Brooks appeared in court, obviously, for the first time yesterday. And the prosecution laid out the case as to why he should remain in jail, detailing that criminal history, the extensive criminal history that he has dating back decades. Also telling the court for the first time, where we learned information that this 8-year-old boy tragically lost his life, saying that while they are asking for 5 counts of intentional homicide, they also are expecting to add another charge because of the death of this young boy. And it certainly appeared as though in that moment this suspect began to sob. But the judge made very clear that he is setting an unusually high bond for him at $5 million. It is likely that Brooks will remain in jail until his trial. Savannah?
And now investigators do believe that he drove into the crowd on purpose. Does that mean there's any word yet on a motive?
You know, that's what this community wants to know. Why would this person allegedly do the actions that he is charged with? What we know is that he was fleeing another incident that was connected with a knife. Police here have made very clear that they wanted to clean up the rumors that they were chasing him. They tell us that, in fact, was not the case here. But as to the fact of why he did this, that's what people want to know. We've talked to several witnesses who say he had ample opportunities to stop, and he didn't. All the witnesses that we've spoken to say that it looked like he did this on purpose. He knew exactly what he was doing. But the big question that remains is why didn't he stop? Savannah?
Megan Fitzgerald in Waukesha for us this morning. Thank you so much.
New details are emerging in the death of Brian Laundrie. The Florida Medical Examiner's Office that conducted the autopsy said Tuesday that Laundrie died by suicide from a self-inflicted gunshot wound to the head. The attorney for the Laundrie family said they were informed of the cause of death yesterday. The full autopsy report won't be released to the public until law enforcement wraps up its investigation. Laundrie's remains were found inside a Florida nature preserve last month. Police were searching for him following the death of his fiancée, Gabby Petito. Authorities had named Laundrie a person of interest in the case. Welcome back. The jury in the Unite the Right trial in Charlottesville has reached a partial verdict, awarding more than $26 million to 9 victims of that violent 2017 rally. But the judge says the jury remains deadlocked on 2 counts at the heart of the case. Did the defendants conspire to commit racially motivated violence? NBC News national security correspondent Ken Delaney has been following the case. He joins us now with more. Ken, good morning. So walk us through this partial verdict. What has the jury decided?
Good morning, Joe. Well, on 4 of the 6 claims, the jury found the defendants liable and, as you said, awarded a pretty hefty sum of damages, $26 million in compensatory and punitive damages. But at the heart of the case, those first 2 counts of conspiracy under that 1871 Ku Klux Klan law, the jury deadlocked. And this really had all the hallmarks of a compromise verdict, because we had a note from the jury a few days ago that said, what happens if we deadlock on the first 3 counts, but we want to award on the last 3? Well, they ended up on the 3rd count of conspiracy under Virginia law. They did find the defendants liable in the end. So it's definitely a victory for these victims who are suing these white supremacist organizations. It very likely will bankrupt these people because they don't have $26 million. I should say that about half of that award went against James Fields, the man who drove the car into the crowd and killed a woman, Heather Heyer. He's serving life in prison, so he certainly doesn't have $12 million. But that was the whole point of this, Joe, was to bankrupt these organizations and to send a message that this kind of conduct cannot be tolerated.
So, Ken, this is the first major trial in years to be tried under the so-called Ku Klux Klan Act. It's a federal law from the Reconstruction era. What does the law say? How's it being applied in this case?
Yeah, so that is the setback here, is that law makes it sort of a civil tort violation to deprive people of their constitutional civil rights. It was designed to go after the Ku Klux Klan, as you said, an 1871 law, and on those counts the jury deadlocked. Now, the plaintiff's lawyers did say they will refile, and they have every right to do that. There's no double jeopardy in a civil case. They can try those counts again. They believe that they had a bad jury instruction from the judge, and the jury was confused. We'll see what happens there. But the reason that's important is that very law is being used to sue Donald Trump and some other people accused of fomenting the January 6th insurrection. So it will be interesting to see whether these plaintiffs can get a victory on those counts, Joe.
Yeah, and Ken, while we have you, we want to ask you about the January 6th House Committee. It has now subpoenaed members of 3 far-right groups, including the Proud Boys and the Oath Keepers, for information about the attack on the Capitol. So unlike some of the other high-profile figures to be subpoenaed, executive privilege won't come into play this time. What kinds of things are lawmakers looking for here?
Well, they're looking to answer the fundamental question that the Justice Department has not answered, which is, was there a conspiracy well before the event to attack the Capitol? Because right now there's no evidence either way, whether it was a spontaneous decision or whether it was planned. That's not in the criminal cases right now. The problem is about 36 of these Proud Boys and Oath Keepers defendants have been charged criminally. So there's a very real question about Fifth Amendment here. Stuart Rhodes, for example, the head of the Oath Keepers, looks like he's under FBI investigation. He has not been charged, but he is able to go to the committee and claim the Fifth and not talk. So it may be that this is just for show, but I can tell you, Joe, the committee has interviewed more than 200 witnesses, and they're getting a lot of information from a lot of channels, and they're going to have a lot to say at some point, Joe.
All right, we know you'll stay on it. Ken, thanks so much. Social media companies have been able to use the law to shield themselves from lawsuits brought by victims of sex trafficking.
Well, now a Texas attorney is asking the U.S. Supreme Court to take up a case against Facebook that would re-examine that law. NBC News senior national correspondent Kate Snow spoke with the attorney taking on the social media giant.
Savannah and Joe, Annie McAdams is a personal injury attorney from Houston, Texas. She used to represent car accident victims or people who suffered dramatic injuries. Well, now she's trying to get her case taken all the way to the U.S. Supreme Court, asking them to re-examine a law that tech companies for years have been pointing to as a way to get out of suits just like hers.
Update on Facebook litigation.
Houston attorney Annie McAdams is waging an unprecedented fight against Facebook.
What do you think Facebook thought when you filed this suit initially?
Probably underestimated me, which I welcome at any time.
What did you think when you filed the suit?
I thought that they should buckle up.
A busy mom and personal injury attorney, a few years ago she started being asked to represent teens who'd been sold for sex.
It didn't matter where the client was from. The one thing that they all shared was the role of social media or technology in their trafficking case.
Connecting them to the trafficker.
Without a doubt.
McAdams sued Facebook on behalf of Jane Doe.
When did you get on Facebook?
I would say about 13.
We agreed not to show her full face. When she was 16, an older man sent a friend request.
When I was younger, it was about who had the most friends. So it's like anybody who would send you a request, just add them.
He said she could make $2,000 a week modeling. After a fight with her mom, she met him.
He took my phone, so I couldn't run away. I didn't know where I was.
At this hotel, he took suggestive photos and posted them online. Within hours, men were paying to rape her.
I feel like I lost a part of my childhood then. It's something that will live on with me forever.
You filed this suit 3 years ago. What's happened since?
Delay after delay, appeal after appeal.
Facebook argues the case should be thrown out, that the company is shielded by Section 230 of the 1996 Communications Decency Act, long interpreted by courts to mean social media sites are not legally responsible for the content users post. But McAdams alleges Facebook and its algorithms are part of the problem.
What we're looking at here is the independent actions that Facebook actually takes to connect these predators with these children and how they profit from the connections that happen as a result of that.
Facebook's parent company, Meta, says human trafficking is abhorrent and is not allowed on our platforms. We use technology to thwart this kind of abuse. It also says the company is on track to spend more than $5 billion this year alone on safety and security. But despite the company's defense, McAdams and her team have won some victories all the way through the Texas Supreme Court.
Have you gone further than any other case?
Yes. We have gone the farthest.
Now she and 25 state attorneys general are asking the U.S. Supreme Court to re-examine the law.
Changing the law is only a case away.
A Meta official says Facebook will file opposing a Supreme Court review.
The way the case is going, I feel very hopeful.
But Jane Doe wants the highest court to take her case.
We will keep having these problems unless something is changed. And if it's not, then you'll be sitting with another me probably 3 years from now.
When I asked Annie McAdams how she feels about going up against Facebook and all their attorneys, she used a very Texas saying, guys. She said, the bigger the bull, the higher the score. And then she said, the fancier the lawyer, the taller the building, the harder they fall. She and Jane Doe both said to me they really think they have a shot at winning this. They really think they have a shot in the U.S. Supreme Court as well. On the other side, though, you've got Facebook about to really fight this, and the Supreme Court has not said yet whether they'll take this up. Joe and Savannah.
All right, Kate Snow, thank you so much. Let's now take a look at what's making news around the world this morning. Matt Bodner is with us today from Moscow. Hey, Matt.
Savannah, good morning. We'll start this one off today with a dire warning from the World Health Organization. They're saying that an additional 700,000 people could die from COVID-19 in Europe and parts of Asia by March. In Europe alone, the WHO has already counted 1.5 million dead from the virus. The warning comes amid shocking case surges across the continent, and in several countries at least, governments are starting to consider vaccine mandates. We move along now to Italy, where Rudy Gaudet, the only person convicted in the 2007 murder of a British student, Meredith Kercher, has been freed after serving most of his 16-year prison sentence. He was planned to be released in January, but the judge let him out early. Gaudet denied killing Kercher, but he was convicted in a fast-track trial. And finally, we have some streaming news. Fresh off the success of Squid Game, yet another South Korean TV show has exploded into an overnight hit. This one is a fantasy horror series called Hellbound. It's overtaken Squid Game as the most popular series globally on Netflix. That is, according to data from FlixPatrol Analytics.
Welcome back. The full list of nominees for the 2022 Grammy Awards is out, and it looks like there's one favorite to steal the show. Jazz artist Jon Batiste leads all musicians with 11 nominations, mostly for his album We Are and his film score for the movie Soul. Justin Bieber, Doja Cat, and Her all came in second in terms of nominations with 8 each. Olivia Rodrigo scored 7 nominations, including 1, listen to this, in each of the big 4 categories. That includes Best Song, Album, Record, and Best New Artist. Now, despite having an amazing year, Taylor Swift only got 1 nomination. That was for her lockdown album, Evermore. So her fans, as you probably know by now, I am one, aren't so happy with that. All right, now it is time for your weekly checkup. One of our favorite segments, NBC News senior medical correspondent Dr. John Torres joins us now to discuss the latest health headlines you may have missed. And you heard that tease about grandmothers and their grandchild. We'll get to that in a minute. Good morning, Dr. Torres. But let's start with our first study, and it looks at common medicines that might actually raise blood pressure. How many people are affected by this, and what should people know, doctor?
You know, this actually affects a lot of people, a lot more people than we think across the country. And here's the thing, people might not even know this is happening, particularly people who aren't getting treated for blood pressure. And what they have found out is certain medications that you take, and these are over-the-counter medications, can actually increase that. So 1 in 5 U.S. adults with high blood pressure could be taking these medications. And we're talking common meds that you might not think about raising blood pressure. Antidepressants, prescription NSAIDs, things like ketorolac, diclofenac, those kind of medications that a lot of people take, steroids, and even estrogen-containing medications. These can raise blood pressure to the point where it can actually become hard to control. And so it's important that you understand what you need to do here. And these are your doctor's orders. Go over all your medications, including any kind of over-the-counter medications with your doctor. You want to make sure they have an understanding of what's going on. And that doesn't just include medication. That includes supplements, herbs, anything you're taking that could interfere with blood pressure medications. Consider replacing those meds with some safer alternatives.
All right. And doctor, now new research shows many parents think their children might be a bit too selfish and not grateful for what they receive. Now, I mean, parents might just think that in general, but this is actually some research. What can you tell us here?
This is research, and they looked at children 4 to 10 years old. And I think parents always think, you know, their children aren't as grateful as I was because you forget what you were like as a child. But in this case, they're saying they're concerned because they seem to be more selfish. They seem to don't be as grateful. But remember, Thanksgiving's coming up, so this is a great time to talk to them about that. Again, as 4 in 5 parents say their children this age group, 4 to 10 years old, aren't as grateful as they should be. And over half of parents worry that they're spoiling their child. So what can you do? Well, here's your doctor's orders. First and foremost, remember, this is Thanksgiving coming up. So simply talk to them about Thanksgiving and different things they can do around this time frame. And then go old school with them. Have them start doing simple things like sending out thank you cards instead of just saying thank you or texting thank you. And then have them help out around the house. But when they do chores, make sure they're doing the chores and you're not doing it for them. And that'll help teach them that gratefulness, that gratitude, hopefully, but they're probably more grateful than you think they are anyway.
Those seem a little bit different than your normal doctor's orders, Dr. Torres, telling parents to have their kids help out around the house. I love it. All right, now let's get to that last one that we teased. There's something really special about a grandmother's bond with her grandchildren. We all know that, but there seems to be some science actually behind it. Tell us about this.
You know, and this is great because a lot of grandparents will be meeting their grandkids for Thanksgiving and having a wonderful time. And what we found out with grandmothers in particular is grandmothers, when they're around their grandchildren, it actually lights up part of their brain that's associated with emotional empathy. So in other words, if their child's happy and smiling, they're happy and smiling. If their child's sad and crying, they're sad as well. And the connection favors this empathy with grandchildren. But when it comes to their own adult children, that connection favors thought over emotion. So in other words, they're wondering, what's my child thinking? What are they doing? How can I help them out? So doctor's orders, what can you do? Number one, just enjoy your grandchildren. Now is a great time to do that. And remember, Thanksgiving is a wonderful time for getting together. And then with your adult children, don't worry, they're going to be okay.
Again, some different doctor's orders, I think, than you normally give, and we love to hear it, especially right before this holiday. That was a great one today. Dr. Torres, thank you so much, and happy Thanksgiving. I'm telling you that this Thanksgiving is shaping up to be one of the most expensive in history. That's thanks to inflation and supply chain issues. And that's leading to more people seeking help from food banks since they can't afford groceries. NBC News correspondent Dasha Burns joins us now from the Greater Boston Food Bank. Dasha, good morning. So tell us a little bit about this. I know you spoke to leaders at that specific food bank, but what did they tell you about the issues they're facing ahead of Thanksgiving? How many people are showing up there? Tell us, what have you learned?
Yeah, hey, Savannah, good morning. We are in the main hub for the Greater Boston Food Bank. This is a warehouse that is more than 100,000 square feet. I mean, check this place out. It's huge. It is full of food that supplies 600 food pantries, meal programs, and shelters all across Massachusetts. This is one of the largest food banks in the country, and it's part of that Feeding America network. But, Savannah, on a normal day, this operation is massive and is a complicated logistical operation. But right now, with the Thanksgiving holiday, a surge in need always around this time of year. But on top of that, you've got supply chain issues. You've got shortages. Food is more expensive, and there are some things that are just plain difficult or impossible to get. Take a listen to what the folks here told me.
We're seeing price increases between 10 and 20% on those critical staple items that you have in a holiday meal. Turkey's up 10%, sweet potatoes up 28%. And so, and very difficult to find cranberry sauce these days. So
cranberry sauce. I mean, these things that you wouldn't think twice about in a normal holiday season. And Savannah, it's not even just the food itself, it's also getting the food here. It's all of the surrounding supplies, things like boxes, things like these pallets that you see here. All of that is harder to get. These garage doors here, that's where the trucks come to pick up the food. They'll be picking up these pallets shortly, but it's also where trucks come to deliver the supplies. And on some days, they might be expecting 15 trucks. 5 of them might not show up. So they're dealing with uncertainty, and they're doing the best they can to make sure that they still get those meals to those families, Savannah.
Absolutely. So, I mean, Dasha, knowing all that and everything that you just told us and walking us around there, I mean, what does this mean for this increasing number of people who do plan to rely on food banks? I mean, not only just for Thanksgiving, not only just for their meal tomorrow, but for holidays moving forward as we head into the season.
Well, look, food banks have had to get creative. They've had to find some substitutes for items that are either too expensive or just too hard to get. So what it might mean is the Thanksgiving plate that you traditionally see, it might look a little bit different. Take a listen.
We are distributing over 200,000 chickens to a client. So a Thanksgiving meal this year, instead of having a turkey at the center of the plate, maybe another poultry item like a whole chicken. And when I run out of whole chickens, then I will substitute chicken parts, chicken breast, legs, drums, and thighs. We want to be able to offer a poultry item to the client, but it may or may not be a turkey this year.
So, Savannah, all of these boxes that you see right here, they are going to go out to those different food pantries today. We were at one of those food pantries yesterday that receives these supplies from the Greater Boston Food Bank, and I was talking to the executive director there. She says she's seeing families that are coming to her for the very first time, never thinking they would need to go to a food pantry. But she also says what's really heartbreaking for her is she's seeing families that came to the food pantry at the beginning of the pandemic, then got back on their feet. They found employment or got their jobs back, and now are having to come back again because what they used to be able to afford on that paycheck, they can't afford anymore. They go to the grocery store and they see those prices and they just can't do it, Savannah.
Just heartbreaking. So many Americans are feeling that this year, but so good to see all those people there who are helping them out. Dasha, thank you so much. Thanks for showing us around. Now, for millions of people celebrating Thanksgiving tomorrow, the turkey will, of course, be the star of the show, but preparing that bird can be daunting, especially for first-timers who are cooking for a hungry crowd. Fortunately, we have an expert handy, Paul Kelly, a turkey farmer and managing director of Kelly Bronze. Good morning, Paul. Good to see you. So I will admit, I'm a first-time hoster. I'm a little nervous about the turkey, and we know the line between an undercooked turkey and a dry one can be thin. So most of us don't cook a whole turkey all that often. Tell us, what should chefs at home know before making that turkey to try to make it perfect?
Okay, well, here we go. Let's first of all, there's no one right way or wrong way of cooking a turkey. You can make it as complicated as you want. You can brine it, baste it, do all those magical, wonderful things. But I would say if you're a first-timer, for sure, what I always say to people is, you know what, just treat turkey like a big chicken. That's all it is. You know, you just got to cook it normally, and there's nothing wrong with roast turkey on its own. And that's what I say to people, keep it simple. You know, it's very easy. You know, what I would do, I've got a turkey behind me there that just cooked in an hour and a half. I just put it breast down in the roasting tin with a couple of pints of water in the bottom, season it with salt and pepper, put it in the oven, hot oven, 350 for an hour. After an hour, you take it out and you turn it over with your oven gloves. But then this is the most important thing you can possibly have when cooking a turkey, and that's a meat thermometer, because that tells you everything you need to know. You put it in the breast, when it's at temperature, you take the turkey out and it's done. And it really is, it can be that simple. But as I say, you can make it as complicated as you want.
I love the tip of it's just like a chicken, basically. Think of it as a big chicken. Also, yours, of course, this is not surprising since you're our expert here, but look at how perfect that turkey looks right over your shoulder. All right, let's talk leftovers. That's one of my family's favorite things, turkey sandwiches the next day. But what recommendations do you have on how to safely store all that extra food to make sure it's still good the next couple days?
Okay, well, I mean, another way, we recommend carving it, just break it into its primer. So keep the muscle as whole as you possibly can when you carve it, when you finish with it. And then you mustn't let the turkey dry out, because turkey does have a reputation for drying out. It actually does if you leave it open. So you want to get some saran wrap or put it in a dish and make sure it is well covered in the fridge so it doesn't lose all that moisture. And, you know, you can keep it in the fridge for 4 or 5 days and it'll keep perfectly like that. But keep the, if you can, keep the turkey on the bone, keep the meat on the bone. What you don't need, don't carve off, leave it on the bone, put saran wrap or another wrap over it and keep it in the fridge. Very simple.
That is a great tip. All right, Paul, thank you so much. I needed you this morning. Again, hosting My First Tomorrow. Thank you so much. Happy Thanksgiving.
Thank you. Happy Thanksgiving.
NASA's newest mission to deliberately crash a spacecraft into an asteroid is now underway.
You heard that right. The DART mission, or Double Asteroid Redirection Test, lifted off last night aboard a SpaceX rocket in California. Its goal is to successfully alter the path of a moon that is currently orbiting an asteroid. That asteroid is set to pass Earth in September, which is when the spacecraft will crash into it to redirect its path away from our planet. If the mission goes as planned, NASA has said it could be used in the future to defend Earth. And again, you heard all that right. That was not about a new movie coming out. It's very cool.
You can never be too careful.
Yeah, exactly. All right. Now, this year, Thanksgiving will certainly bring many heartwarming family reunions after a long time spent apart during the pandemic.
For some, going home for the holidays can spark feelings of anxiety and stress as people navigate difficult family dynamics. Joining us now with some advice to get through the holidays is Dr. George James. He's a licensed marriage and family therapist. Dr. James, always good to have you with us. So this is a side of the holiday season maybe we don't talk about very often, but what's your advice to someone who is feeling anxious about going home, seeing family this week? What can they do to take care of their mental health?
Yeah, good morning to you both. And yes, you know, anxiety actually is everywhere. People are feeling it for so many different reasons. Whether, as Savannah mentioned, you're cooking your first meal, whether your kids are coming home for the holidays, whether you're coming home to see your family members, it's everywhere. And so what I really want to encourage people is that to own it, to acknowledge it, that I'm anxious about something. Maybe somebody's going to ask me a question I don't want to answer, or I'm going to be there longer than I want to. Be aware that the anxiety is there, and don't take your anxiety out on your loved ones. Don't have that extra attitude or maybe even be silent. Try to find a way how to engage folks while also protecting yourself. That might mean taking the extra time or maybe planning that second visit so that you're not there too long. Do the thing that you need to do so you can be there long enough, connect, but then also take care of yourself and do whatever else you need to do.
Absolutely. Doctor, you mentioned being kind of quiet or having that attitude, which I think might be some people's response just kind of naturally when they get those questions they don't want to answer about their relationship status or how work is or maybe a politics conversation. Do you have any tips for kind of setting healthy boundaries so that you don't sort of retreat and it can stay as happy and amicable and loving as possible?
You know, there is nothing wrong with boundaries, especially when there's so many different things that you might have to encounter. The thing about it is that not to limit yourself to other people's expectations, and that having boundaries to protect yourself is perfectly fine. What you want to do, though, is to make sure that the boundary is not just cutting everybody off or limiting everybody from engaging with you, but also respectfully letting people know this is not something I want to do or want to talk about. So that might mean you might take a step away, or you might engage in something else. Maybe you play with the kids or the grandkids or something else that allows you to say, like, this is my boundary. I'm holding it firm, but I'm also not going to be so cold that I can't engage you or be able to interact with you.
Great advice.
I mean, we're going to see some heartfelt reunions, but thousands of families did lose someone during this pandemic. How do you get through the holidays while grieving a loved one, and how can we be there for friends or relatives in that situation?
No, if we really think about it, unfortunately, this time of year does bring that up for a lot of people, right? Sometimes people have lost people. Sometimes people have lost people even around this particular time. And then when we add COVID and just the stressors that people have gone through, it is an additional loss that people are experiencing. And so some of it, once again, is just to be able to acknowledge, I'm sad or I'm low, or you know what, I need to have some good times with friends and family. That's one way that you can grieve. You can let other people know, and you can get the support that is helpful for you. But most of all is recognizing that most of us can experience loss and that it's okay to experience it. You go through those stages, as they say, but it's important that you have the support of those you love and care for and let them know so they can help you.
All right. Dr. James, thank you so much for your advice on this important holiday. We really appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you. Happy
Thank you
Thanksgiving.
both. Hope that you have a great holiday time.
Thanks for watching our YouTube channel. Follow today's top stories and breaking news by downloading the NBC News app.